And welcome everyone to a AP Top 25 poll reaction. I'm Andy Katz here for Bleacher Report, March Madness, NCAA, TNT Sports. Apologize for last Monday. I was ready to do this. I was at O'Hare and I was not feeling well. Just sometimes something happens over a 24-hour period. A lot of travel across the globe, but practically at least part of the globe, and whatever, pick up something that happens. Let me just say before we get to the top 25, I wrote about this in my weekly word on NCAA.com. When Madison Square Garden is packed the way we've seen it over the last couple of weeks, I was there for UConn Gonzaga, and then Saturday for Kentucky against Ohio State and UCLA against North Carolina. Both essentially sellout crowds. If there were empty seats, I couldn't see them. It is, I think, arguably the best place to see a college basketball game. Been there for the Big East, obviously. Been there for the NCAA tournament. When there hasn't been a local team, go back to when Florida beat Wisconsin. Chris Chiosa went the length to deliver the layup. It's just off the charts. And to a player and a coach, I have never met a player or coach who, after experiencing that, says this was one of the greatest places I've ever played or coached. There's just something different about it. You know the history in the building. You know who's come before you. You appreciate it. And I just think there's great sight lines. So I am a huge fan. I hope the NCAA tournament continues to go back there. They've sort of rotated in the region between MSG and Brooklyn and now Newark this year. But one last thing on that, what I loved was Hubert Davis, the North Carolina coach, bringing in his former Knick teammate John Starks to tell the Tar Heels what it means to play on that floor at the Garden. All right, so let's dive in to the AP Top 25 poll. We're going to go through each team here, and then we're going to react to my Power 37. And then we'll get to the player of the week, team of the week. It's a very light games to watch this week. And then we'll take your questions. So first off, Tennessee, Auburn, Iowa State, Duke, Alabama. Tennessee, still number one, undefeated. I have no problem with that. My top five was just tweaked a little bit. I felt that it was important to switch Auburn and Tennessee, 1 and 2. What Auburn did to Purdue on Saturday was about as impressive as we've seen a team do to another peer-to-peer top 25 team in quite some time. Absolutely destroyed them. So they look like the best team in the country. They're going to play it in the SEC. We're going to see how it all plays out. Don't normally flip when someone doesn't lose. But after watching them again, I saw them in person in Maui. Their one loss was to Duke at Cameron. No shame in that. I feel like they're the best team in the country. I'm not alone in thinking that. And we'll see. The SEC is going to play out. Iowa State, they have the one loss to Auburn in Maui on a Janai Broom tip-in, who, by the way, played Saturday after having his shoulder popped in a week ago. And the week before, they destroyed Ohio State, which beat Kentucky by 20. We'll get to that momentarily. Duke at 4. Obviously, they're playing great right now. Cooper Flagg turned 18 on Saturday. Crazy what he's done, even just as a 17-year-old. So Alabama at 5. I had Florida at 5. So I switched those, 5 and 6. Florida, undefeated. Even though North Carolina had been struggling, they go to Charlotte, essentially de facto home game for North Carolina. They win that game midweek. Alabama, tons of credit. They go to Grand Forks, North Dakota for Grant Nelson, who played at North Dakota State, but from North Dakota. And they get taken down to the final minute. They win 97-90. Trayson Eaglestaff, remember that name. If somehow North Dakota can win the Summit, he had 40 on Alabama. He was something else in that game. So I flipped those two. You got Kansas 7, Marquette 8, Oregon 9, Kentucky 10. So my back was Oklahoma, UConn, Marquette, Kansas. Okay. You see Oklahoma there at 12. The reason I've moved Oklahoma up into my top 10, the Sooners, that same event, Jumpman event, couldn't call it a tournament. It was 2 different nights, 4 Nike schools. Oklahoma comes back to beat Michigan to remain undefeated. Oklahoma won the battle for Atlantis. They beat their rival Oklahoma State. Porter Mosier's doing a great job. Jeremiah Fears, he dropped 30 in that Michigan game on a 4-point play to beat the Wolverines. So to me, Oklahoma's playing like a top 10 team. I like, I like I said, I would have Kansas a little later. Marquette and Oregon, fine with the order there. Oregon, 1 loss. That was UCLA. I was there 2 Sundays ago. Buzzer beater. They're going to be right there to win the Big Ten. Marquette got some scares in the Big East, but took care of business. Now Kentucky. So Kentucky at 10. Obviously, I was really high on Kentucky because they won at Gonzaga. Well, in Seattle against Gonzaga. I was there. Great win for the Wildcats. But the reason I dropped Kentucky down to 14, and maybe that's too harsh, but I dropped them, was they lose by 20 to Ohio State. Now, Ohio State played out of their minds. Best game by far in the Jake Giebler era, which is now sort of not even a full year yet because he took over midway through last season for Chris Holtmann. Now the head coach. Bruce Thornton had 30 at the Garden, but nobody saw Kentucky losing by 20. I think when if you lose a game like that, neutral court, Garden, maybe it's a couple of spots. But you lose by 20, I think you got to get dinged a little more. Plenty of chances to move back up. UConn, I have, 10, 11, whatever, that's fine. Kind of playing on the edge here. Xavier played great. Almost beat UConn at home. UConn turns around, close game with Butler. So now you go to the back part of the top 15. Texas A&M, Gonzaga, Houston. This is Buzz Williams' best team that he's had at A&M. So I had A&M at 11, a little higher. A&M's got the win over Purdue a week ago in Indy. Beat Ohio State. Played okay in Vegas. So I'm high on the Aggies now. So let's pause right there. Look at the SEC in your top 25. Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. 7 of the top 15. Before we get to Ole Miss there at 16. The SEC is going to dominate the number of bids. They're going to have the most teams on the top 4 lines at during the selection process. They may have 3 number 1 seeds. If this plays out, I think they will, and the 4th being Iowa State. We'll see if it all holds true. I'm not saying Duke can't be, but we could have 3 SEC and 1 Big 12. Gonzaga, big game coming up. We'll talk about with UCLA, but talent-wise, I have no problem with them in the top 15. Where'd I have the Zags? I dropped them a little bit. I dropped them to 21, but still in the top 25. All right, so here's the Houston thing. I did put Houston back in my Power 37. deep in the pack. So Houston's very interesting here because Houston, the metrics love Houston. I think Kelvin Sampson clearly has a team that can compete in the top part of the Big 12. But let's just peel back the resume right now. The only team they've beaten that, well, no, because Notre Dame is not an NCAA tournament team. They're not going to the tournament unless they win the ACC. So Houston does not have a win yet against the field of what I'm projecting to be the field. So that's why I'm waiting to see. I think that's fair. Ole Miss at 16, no problem there. And look, Houston played a great schedule. They just didn't win the games. At some point, you got to win the games. I have Ole Miss at 23. Cincinnati, great win over Xavier the previous week. Then they go and beat Dayton. So back on that Cincinnati bandwagon in my top 25, 17 here, no problem. 18, Michigan State. I have Michigan State at 19, so we're right in that same group. The Spartans, I think, are playing as well as any team in the Big Ten right now. And we can say that Michigan State has a legit shot to get in, to win the Big Ten title. Mississippi State at 19. Love the Bulldogs here. They went in and they beat Memphis. So I was waiting for Mississippi State to have a great win. They got it. I have them at 16. San Diego State at 20 right now. San Diego State is the best team in the Mountain West, so they're back to that. I've got them 25 in the top 25. All right, Purdue at 21. So I dropped Purdue way down to 30. Again, there has to be a penalty for getting boat raced, even against my number one, Auburn, number 2 team. Purdue's gotten outclassed in back-to-back Saturdays, A&M in Indy, and then against Auburn in Birmingham. There has to be a drop from that. UCLA at 22. I dropped them actually not as far. I have them at 15 for gifting that game to Kentucky. I don't know why they passed it in the corner, even if I think it was Andrews. Even if he catches it, he's trapped. Missed free throws by Bilodeau. That game was there for them. Arkansas at 23. I'm at 18. Listen, the thing with Arkansas, we're going to know more once they get in the SEC, which is loaded. Illinois at 24. Like the pick of the Illini. I had the Illinois in the top 25 for many weeks, so they're at 20 for me. Kasparas Yakashunas, big-time NBA play to beat Missouri. Love when the bragging rights game has meaning. Last year, blowout, Missouri had a horrible year. I've covered that game many times. Half the crowd is in black and gold, the other half in orange and blue. Great atmosphere in St. Louis at the Enterprise Center. And then at 25, I believe that's Baylor. Sorry, it's really faded if you can't see it. I got Baylor just outside. VJ Edgecombe is a phenomenal freshman. He's going to just posterize you. If he had been healthy in that UConn game and Jeremy Roach doesn't get hurt, concussion protocol, they might have won that game at UConn. So they haven't played the best teams when they've been fully healthy. That's what we're waiting on. All right, so before we get to our other items here, there is a glaring omission. Well, let me back up here for a second before I get to this. Okay, there are 2 teams in my top 25 that I thought still could have been in there. Memphis at 17. Yes, they lost to Mississippi State. Previous week, they beat Clemson. I have Clemson at 22. So those are 2 schools that I think are top 25 good. Here's where, if I could get our Bleacher Report crew to clip. There's a team that I have at 13. They are not in the top 25. And that team is Maryland. Okay? Maryland needs to be in the top 25. I saw them on Saturday in person at Barclays. They absolutely obliterated Syracuse. Derek Queen is one of the top 3 to 4 freshmen in the country. Kevin Willard, the head coach, says he's number 1, saying he's over Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, but hey, he's one of the best. Their guard play with Sultan Miguel, transfer from South Florida, Rodney Rice, transfer from Virginia Tech, Jacoby Gillespie, transfer from Belmont, some of the best guards in the country that have come together. Maybe not individually, but as a unit. Julian Reese, playing off a Queen, I mean, he's a secondary, third, fourth guy, and yet he's, potential, has all Big Ten kind of caliber. So, to the voters who aren't paying attention, I know they lost at Purdue, at Mackey. Not very few teams going into Mackey win, not Indianapolis, Mackey. And they lost to a very good Marquette team at home. Beat Villanova and Syracuse. I know the rest of the schedule was soft. I get it. But we could argue the same thing with a number of teams on this list here. Watch Maryland. I'm telling you, Maryland is going to compete for the Big Ten title and a potential 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that 3 to 6 range seed. Maryland, as we enter the holidays, should be ranked 13 in my poll, nowhere in the AP Top 25. Calling you out, voters. Where are the Terps? All right. Player of the week. Bruce Thornton, Ohio State. I mentioned him here. Thornton had 30 in the win over Kentucky at the Garden. Look at that big smile. They had a meeting after they got boat raced by Auburn in Atlanta, and he knew they had to do something. Save the season. We'll see if they can build off of that. So Bruce Thornton, my player of the week. By the way, it was a great week for other players. Donovan Dent, 40 against VCU for New Mexico. 30. Jeremiah Fears for Oklahoma, 4-point play to win it. Can't give it to a guy that loses, but Eagle Staff from North Dakota, he had 40. All right, team of the week. Oklahoma. The Sooners. Go into Charlotte, come back, beat Michigan with that fierce 4-point play. Undefeated. Porter Moser, first year in the SEC, Big 12, SEC, no issue. I mean, the SEC is better than the Big 12. Big 12 has always been good. So if he was going to come into the SEC, he came in with the right time at the right team. It's great to see. Notable games this week. It is a very light week due to the holidays. So I struggled to come up with 10. I could only come up with 5. All right, on Saturday, the 28th, UCLA Gonzaga. That game will be at the Intuit Arena. That's a huge game, I think, for both. Gonzaga easily could have beaten Kentucky, couldn't close it out. They had multiple chances to beat UConn at the Garden. 2-foot little, bunnies. They couldn't convert. UCLA gave that Kentucky game away. So this is going to be a big game. Ole Miss at Memphis. Ole Miss now going to Memphis after Mississippi State went in and won at Memphis. So Memphis, they don't want to lose 2 games in a row to their nearby rivals. That's a big game, I think, really for both again. Ole Miss needs a marquee win, certainly on the road. Memphis wants to protect the FedEx Forum. 2 of my next 3 come from the Mountain West. They're starting early here. Utah State, San Diego State. Utah State with a loss. did beat Iowa in Kansas City. You know, Coach Calhoun doing a great job there in Logan. It just seems like whoever shows up, they win. San Diego State, I think, is the class right now in the Mountain West again. So big game at Viejas. Skipping ahead here for a second. New Mexico at Colorado State. The Lobos, I mentioned Donovan Dent. That game's on Saturday. The Lobos, I think, are a contender in the Mountain West. They have wins over UCLA, USC, let that New Mexico State game slip away, beat VCU, which was projected to win the A-10, by the way. So big road game in Fort Collins. Then I've got this Indiana State-Ohio State game. Indiana State, under Matthew Graves, took over for Josh Scherz. They're 2-0 in the Valley. Right now, Drake undefeated in the Valley and undefeated overall. It's really Drake, Indiana State, and Bradley. Ohio State. This is not going to be an easy game after you just beat Kentucky by 20. This Indiana State team is good. Okay? And so if they win that game, that's going to be a good win for Ohio State as they build back up their resume. So people may be saying, oh, Indiana State, Ohio State. No. That's a potential resume type game. So we don't have as many good games. I mean, in the ensuing weeks, it's going to be very hard to just pick 10. I could get to 10 this week, but these, I think, are 5 important games here this week. All right, let's take a couple of questions here. So the question is, why do I have Maryland, Ohio, and West Virginia as better wins? This is what do I see? And also West Virginia doesn't have Tucker DeVries right now. He's hurt. And I think Maryland's better. They haven't had as many opportunities. And their 2 losses at Mackey, so that was a tough Big Ten opener, and then at home to Marquette. They absolutely obliterated Syracuse. I know that they're not very good, and they know J.J. Starling. And they absolutely crushed Ohio State. Why is UConn still top 15? Well, they keep winning. Doesn't matter. They keep winning. SEC tournament predictions. Hold on. We got a ways to go. It's going to be the best tournament. I mean, the SEC tournament could end up being like the NCAA tournament. Could have like 4 to 6, in the Elite 8. Why isn't Drake ranked? I don't know. They should be. Their strength of schedule. They just won at K-State. Bennett Sturts, 3-pointer to win it in overtime. Ben McCollum doing a phenomenal job. Why doesn't Ohio State deserve to be ranked? Because it was one game. They got crushed the week before. Let's see if they can sustain it. How is 2-loss Duke in the top 5? Well, their win over Auburn helps them. Where is Arizona? They haven't beaten anybody. I'm feeling great about Auburn, especially because Janai Broome got healthy quickly. Is Bama better than Tennessee? Not sure yet. In the preseason, I said yes. Now I don't know. I want to see. Does Pitt deserve a ranking? I heard from Pitt fans, and I wrestled with this. They were right on the outside. Their best win is Ohio State. Let's see what happens going forward. When Memphis is on, yes, they're like playing like a top 10 team. PJ Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, 2 of the best transfers in the country. Why is Illinois lower than Arkansas? Because they did beat them, because people aren't paying attention. Michigan shouldn't be unranked. Yeah, I mean, I have them just outside. Can San Diego State stay in the top 15? Just keep winning. Texas Tech is another team I considered. Why is North Carolina not getting any love with their tough schedule? Because they didn't win any of the games before Saturday. They lost, if you remember, a couple days before to Florida, lost at home to Alabama, lost 2 games in Maui. Is Maryland the best Big Ten team? I think they're right there with Oregon and Michigan State. Can Maryland make the Elite 8? Yes. No question. Georgia. I think Mike White is quietly doing a great job with the Bulldogs. I have them still in the top 30, Power 37. I know the Houston thing Well, yeah. The question is, if Houston didn't lose to Bama, would they be in the top 5? If they won that game, the whole narrative changes. St. John's, tip in by Zuby at Providence. So I had St. John's in the 30s in my Power 37. I'm big on Mississippi State now. Great win at Memphis. Huge. Wisconsin, excuse me. Wisconsin end of season prediction. I will say the Badgers will be somewhere between 7 to 10 in the Big Ten and probably like a 6 seed. I don't think UConn will three-peat. Who's winning the Big Ten right now? I think it's 1 of 3. Oregon, Maryland, or Michigan State. LSU, they've been LSU and Vanderbilt and South Carolina have had some decent wins and are sort of getting overlooked, but that's the thing. There's no bad team in the SEC. 0. ACC is struggling. I don't know if it's NIL, recruiting, what, but Duke is a lock. Clemson will likely be in. I think Pitt will get in. I think North Carolina finds a way in. So that's 4. Can someone else make a run? SMU, maybe. Is Georgetown a sleeper? They beat Seton Hall, beat Creighton. They're quietly playing well. No non-conference wins to speak of. Kent State win is a good one for Alabama. Great schedule. I'm not worried about Duke's offense. Will Purdue turn things around? Purdue's all going to be about matchups. Excuse me. All be about matchups. If Purdue goes against a really athletic team like they did with Auburn and A&M, that's a problem. So they'll be better, but that's the issue for them. All right. We are back every Monday during the holiday season. So in between Christmas and New Year's, next Monday, poll will drop. There won't be a lot of changes because there's very few games, obviously, next weekend. So, but we'll have plenty to discuss as we get ready for a big week the following week. So next week will probably be a little bit more forward-looking than looking back. As always, you can follow me at the Andy Katz on X, the Real Andy Katz on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky as well, Threads, NCAA.com, March Madness MBB, here at Bleacher Report. Caitlin Schmidt does an unbelievable job as our producer. We've got a great team in Atlanta and in New York and in Indy. And I thank everyone. It's been a great 2024. We look ahead to 25, but we'll see you before the new year. Everyone, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and just have a great week. Safe week, great week. Thanks for always watching and engaging, reading. Take shots at me, that's okay. Some fans like it, some don't. All good. Love it all. So again, appreciate everyone. Have a great holiday week.